President, I ask unanimous consent that I be recognized to speak in morning business for up to 15 minutes.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I want to thank those who have listened to our emails that we just sent out back in Florida, alerting them that they'll be speaking here on the floor. It may be the last time I speak for this year. I wanted to take a few minutes today to kind of update everyone on what this first year in the Senate's been like. And first of all, it's been a tremendous privilege and an honor. There isn't a day that goes by that I don't come here to this building early in the morning when I can get to the gym. I probably should do that more than I do, but then and see this building lit up in the darkness, and just takes my breath away that I actually get to work here on behalf of the people of the state of Florida. I recognize what an honor and a privilege it is to have this position, not just in this unique institution, which is different than perhaps any legislative body in all of human history, but this republic that really stands out in the history of mankind. I think as Americans, we should always take a moment to recognize that in America, on this floor, we debate and sometimes solve issues that other countries fight wars with each other about. And that's a real blessing that we have and a real opportunity to really be an example for the world. And I'm grateful and feel blessed to be a part of it. And I want to thank the people of Florida for the opportunity to do it. I want to share two observations as this year comes to an end, and hopefully today or tomorrow or sometime this weekend, we will wrap up our work here in this body for 2011. Observations that I have after my first year here. I think I'm 3 weeks away from having sworn in for the first time. And so there's a couple things that concern me. The first is this real lack of urgency. There are some major issues confronting America, and these have to be confronted. We need to look no further than to Europe to see what our future holds, unfortunately, if some of the issues that now face us are not confronted. That's not hyperbole, and it's not partisanship. It's reality. It's math. This country borrows more money than it needs to, or should. This is a country that's now spending more money than it takes in at an alarming pace, and there's no plan in place to prevent that. And that's not a partisan observation. That's not a Republican concern or a Democrat concern. That's the concern of every person who's grounded in reality, that we cannot continue doing what we are doing now. And there's specific things that are in trouble that we should be very concerned about. Medicare is one example. You know, I have a very special place in my heart for Medicare. Number one, there are a lot of people in Florida that are on Medicare. And number two, in my own life, both in my father's illness last year before he passed away, and this year where my mother has suffered some setbacks in her health, I've seen firsthand how important Medicare is. And there are two things that worry me about Medicare. The first is that it won't be there when my generation and future Americans retire, and the other, just as important, is that somehow, because we failed to act in a timely manner, people like my mother that are currently on Medicare may some point in their lifetime see their benefits change dramatically or see the program and quality of access decline. And so I think we need to do everything we can to save Medicare. And we know for a fact, and no one can dispute, that if we leave Medicare the way it is right now, that program's going to be in a lot of trouble. And I hope there's a sense of urgency about that, about the fact that our economy is now smaller than our debt. $15 trillion. That's a lot of money that we owe, that our children and our grandchildren will owe. That's a lot of money. That's a big deal. National security threats that we face, which are significant and have to be confronted. So almost the sense that somehow the major issues can wait until another election or another moment concern me. Because these issues have a tendency to sneak up on you, and a problem becomes a crisis. And it's a lot harder to solve a crisis than it is to solve a problem. And so I hope we have a sense of urgency with regards to these issues in the coming year. There's another thing I'd like to talk about, which is a troubling emergence in the last year in the politics, and it's really this rhetoric that, in my opinion, seeks to divide Americans against each other, basically pits Americans against each other. The way the rhetoric basically goes is that the reason there are Americans that are struggling, they're hurting. People that have lost their jobs, people that are working twice as hard and making half as much, people that have lost their homes, people that have graduated from college and can't find a job. And there's this theme out there by some, including, quite frankly, many in our political leadership, and from time to time even the White House, that is saying to people, the reason why you are doing worse off is because there's a handful of people out there that are doing too well. That the reason why you've lost your job is because someone else is being too greedy. That the reason why, you're losing your home is because someone else owns too many homes. That the reason why you're making less money is because someone else is making too much money. And I'm troubled by that rhetoric that pits people against each other. Because the second part of that argument, by the way, is give the government more power. Give us government more power so we can step in and right this wrong. So we can take away from the people that have too much and give to those people that do not have enough. And let me tell you why I'm troubled by that. The first reason why I'm troubled by that is because it is absolutely not the kind of country we have been for 220 some odd years. It's not in our nature. Americans have never been a people that drive through a nice neighborhood and say, oh, I hate the people that live in these nice houses. Americans have been a people that drive through a nice neighborhood and say, congratulations on your nice house. Guess what? We will be joining you soon. We've never been people that go around and confront people that have been financially, or look at people that have been financially successful and say, we hate you, we envy you because of how well you're doing. Americans have celebrated their success and say, guess what? We're going to be successful soon as well. I remember growing up, and I always tell people I'm a child of privilege because I have the privilege and the honor of being born in the greatest country in human history and of having a mother and a father that were married, loved each other, and lived in our home, and these are two of the most important things anyone could have. But my parents were working class folks. My dad was a bartender for most of his life. My mom was a maid and a cashier and a stock clerk at Kmart. We were not people of financial means. In terms of significant financial means, I always tell, look, I always had what I needed. I didn't always have what I wanted, but I always had what I needed. My parents always provided that. I don't ever remember them telling us or teaching us that the only way we could be more successful is if other people were less successful. They never inculcated in us the belief that somehow, in order for us to climb the ladder, other people had to come down from the ladder. On the contrary, what they would do is hold up these examples of success and inspire in us the hope that one day we could be there as well, financially, in our career, what have you. We are people that have always celebrated other people's success so long as we always had the opportunity to meet that success ourselves. That is the American nature. That is the American character. That is one of the things that makes us different from the rest of the world. And I'm afraid we could lose that or are on the verge of losing that. And I'm really concerned that there are those in America's political leadership that are advocating that we abandon that in favor of something else. And I think it's wrong because it doesn't work. That thought process, that somehow other people have to be worse off in order for you to be better off, does not work. People get on boats. People jump fences to get away from that kind of thought process. People flee countries that do that because it doesn't work. It never has. It never has. And it will not work here. And the proof is in the numbers. Let's put aside partisan political rhetoric for a moment and look at the numbers. In January of 2009, when the president was sworn in, he inherited a very bad economy. He inherited a bad economy. He inherited an economy, for example, that had 12 million people out of a job. An economy where gas was $1.85 a gallon, where the debt was at $10.6 trillion, where there were 39 million Americans living in poverty in January of 2009. He inherited a bad economy. But for the first 2 years of his presidency, he had for at least one of the first 2 years, he had 60 votes here in the Senate, which I quickly learned is the way everything seems to happen around here, by 60 votes. He had a majority in the House. He could have anything he wanted. And he said, this is what I want. This is what the president said. He wanted a stimulus package, and he got it. He wanted his health care package, and he got it. He wanted financial services reform, and he got it. So what happened? Let's look at the numbers. Became president, bad economy, got everything he wanted. What's happened since? Well, now there are 13.3 million people unemployed. Gas is now at $3.27 a gallon on average. The debt is now up to $15 trillion. And people in poverty, 39 million when he took office, 46 million people now. So put aside the partisan rhetoric for a moment, just the numbers. Became president, got everything he wanted, and everything got worse. Those are the facts. Now, is this because he's a bad person? Of course not. It's ridiculous. It's because his view of government and politics is wrong. And those who share it are wrong. They're not un-American, they're not bad people. But the proof is it doesn't work. It hasn't worked anywhere else in the world to approach it this way, and it isn't going to work here. It isn't going to work here. So I hope in this new year we'll reverse course on these things and instead embrace and take up the things that do work in America. What makes America become more prosperous? It isn't that complicated, guys. It isn't Fortune 500 companies. It isn't big corporations. Every country in the world has rich people. Every country in the world has billionaires and millionaires. What makes us different is that here, a worker can become an owner. An employee can become an employer. Literally, it happens all the time. You can't walk but 2 blocks anywhere in this country and not bump into somebody that didn't start a business out of the spare bedroom of their home, that didn't take their credit card or their life savings and risked it all behind a great idea. And today, 20 people work for them. That's 20 families being fed. 20 families sending kids to college because somebody had the audacity to take their life savings in pursuit of their dream. And so they opened a business out of the spare bedroom of their home. They opened a business out of a corner in their garage. Nowadays, sometimes with a laptop and an empty table at a Starbucks. And it worked. And we've got to get back to that. And what stands in the way of that are three things above everything else. The first is a tax code that's crazy. It's not complicated. It's not burdensome. It's crazy. It's the craziest thing you've ever seen in your life. First of all, it's full of loopholes and exemptions that have been built in. And you know who helps? That doesn't help the big guys. It doesn't hurt billionaires and millionaires and big corporations. These guys can handle this stuff. They may not like it, but they can hire lawyers and accountants and lobbyists. They can figure this stuff out. You know who a complicated tax code kills? The guy or the gal trying to start a business out of their spare bedroom of their home. So we've got to simplify our tax code. It has to be reformed. If there's stuff in there that's the result of good lobbying instead of good policy, take it out. I hope we'll work on that. Everybody here says they're for tax reform. Let's do it. Let's have some urgency. Let's have some urgency behind that. The second is regulations. Look, we need to have regulations. There's a glass of water. I don't want this thing to have poison in it. I want our air to be clean. We all want things, and government has a role to play in those things. But let me tell you what happens when regulations go too far. When they seem to exist only for the purpose of justifying the existence of a regulator. You don't hurt the guys that have made it. You don't hurt the big corporations or the billionaires. These guys can hire lawyers to deal with all that stuff. And they can hire lobbyists to come here and change all that stuff. It kills the people trying to start a business out of the spare bedroom of their home. And last but not least, so we got to simplify the regulatory system we have in this country as well. And finally, this debt. The debt is a problem because there's no plan in place to do anything about it. And people are afraid, they are concerned, they are worried, and rightfully so, about investing money in an economy that doesn't have a plan to pay its bills. And so I hope we'll reverse course on all those things, because if we do, it'll lead to prosperity. And let me tell you what prosperity will lead to. It will lead to more jobs. More jobs will lead to more taxpayers. More taxpayers will lead to more revenue. And more revenue means we will have money to pay down our debt and do the things that government should do, like our national defense, like invest in infrastructure and in our people. Like provide a safety net to help those who cannot help themselves. But to do that, it all starts with embracing the fundamental principle of America's prosperity. And that is that we have never been a nation of haves and have-nots. We are a nation of haves and soon-to-haves, of people who have made it and people who will make it. And that's who we need to remain if we desire to provide our children what we had in the American century, which is what the 21st century can be, should be, and will be, if in 2012 this body and our leadership reverses course from the direction we are headed and places us on a path that's true to our heritage as a people and embraces for our children and grandchildren the future they deserve. A prosperous and growing America where all things are possible, where anyone from anywhere can accomplish anything, where the son of a bartender and a maid can be a U.S. senator, and where anyone watching, no matter where you start out in life, can accomplish and be anything you want to accomplish if you're willing to work hard, play by the rules, and have the ability to do it. And so with that, I want to wish all my colleagues and the people of Florida and the people of the United States a Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, a Happy New Year. May God always bless our country, and may 2012 bring us the safety and prosperity for our nation and for the world. Thank you very much, Mr. President, and I note the absence of a quorum.